Il professore J.Giordano della Georgetown University illustra in un seminario del 2017 lo stato di sviluppo delle NeuroArmi, utilizzate sia in situazioni di guerra che non. È strano notare l'analogia di alcune di queste armi con i recenti sviluppi della tecnologia portata avanti da Elon Musk, con il suo Neuralink, la cui dimostrazione è stata trasmessa in live il 28 agosto 2020. E tra poco vedremo anche il video di questo evento sottotitolato in italiano. Il professor Giordano, a proposito, parla anche di virus ingegnerizzati, un tema che oggi potrebbe far drizzare i capelli, proprio per il periodo storico che stiamo attraversando. Un po' troppe coincidenze in questo video del 2017, ma non è l'unico, come scopriremo insieme.
J.Giordano here today from Georgetown University. He is a professor, I have to read this because it's a lot. He's a professor in the development of neurobiology and biochemistry.
What types of kind of neuroweapons can we engage and develop? Well, I provide them for you. I don't want to go down into specific granularity as to what each one of them do because I don't want to give you bad dreams. And you're not going to blame me if you wake up in a cold sweat screaming in the middle of the night. But this is what we can do with these things. Again, let's think here about drugs and bugs. If we're looking at drugs, we're looking at what we call in-close pharmaceuticals. These are not weapons of mass destruction. These are weapons of mass disruption. What they can be used to do is create particular yet highly selective effects in individuals so that they can be delivered at very, very low doses, yet deliver a high amplification effect that's called a hormetic potential, to be able to alter cognitions, emotions, and behaviors. How do you do that? Well, you can work on key operatives. In other words, this individual who's sitting before me may be a diplomat. They are now coming to interact with me. They may have a posture that does not necessarily align with mine. Can I alter their cognition? Can I alter their affiliation? Can I alter their emotionality? And in such a way, might I be able to alter their behavior? Yeah, I can. And if in fact this individual possesses political or charismatic capability, charm, charisma, leadership potential, to then stand before their people and say, this guy's my best buddy now, they might go, well, I'm following this guy. Or they might think he's stark raving mad and I've created social disruption within his political ranks. I can do that on a variety of levels, from individuals who are head of a small family or group, to the tribal, to the community, to the large-scale population. So we can utilize these things to be able to affect key operators and dynamic individuals who may charismatically, politically, or through other means of power be able to affect groups. It's a ripple effect. It is a ripple effect. Moreover, we can induce a number of neuromicrobiological agents to then incur something called high morbidity. These are not necessarily mortal agents. We can modify the existing palette of bacteria and viruses through the use of gene editing techniques, very viable. This has been some of my ongoing work with my colleague Diane DeUlis at National Defense University. And what we can also do is recognize that there are existing microbiologicals that can be harnessed to then induce the effects. We can also engage certain chemicals that way. What we want here is a morbidity factor, not necessarily a mortality factor. I want to make people sick. And what I do here is the virus is not necessarily the bug. The virus is what I put over the internet. Let me show you how I can crash a system pretty easily. I affect key individuals here, here, and here. And then I take another community in the back of the room. I affect key individuals there. And then I take another community. I affect key individuals there. And then I do what every good attributional group does. I beat my chest and take credit for it. And what I put out over the internet is, this is a virus, a bacteria, an agent that I have infiltrated into your fill in the blank. I say it's a weapon of mass destruction, and what I tell you it's going to do is it's going to produce paranoia, anxiety, and sleeplessness. What I've just done is I've recruited every paranoid hypochondriac to think that they have whatever that is. I've used salient and sentinel cases, and I create essentially a legion of what's known as the worried well. They now flood emergency rooms. They flood their clinicians. The CDC responds back and says, no, 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 there is no such a thing. And I've created a schism of trust between the population and the polis. It's both a short and a long war's effect. Moreover, I can create particular neuromicrobiologicals that may have a much longer duration of action. For example, modified Zika virus. And what I can then do is, as a consequence of that, is I can affect subsequent generations to incur a public health morbidity and mortality effect that then creates an increased economic and perhaps social burden. Long war scenario. If I wanted to do something that's a little bit more proximate, I can utilize nanoparticulate matter. Now, we can utilize nanoscience to create much better drugs, to get them where they got to go in the brain. I can create nanoscience and nanotechnology to be able to escort certain drugs across the proliferant barrier, which is the blood-brain barrier and cerebrospinal fluid barrier. So I get these things where they got to go. But I can also utilize nanoparticulate matter in a very indiscriminate way. The idea here is that I can get something called high CNS aggregation material that is essentially invisible to the naked eye and even to most scanners because it is so small that it selectively goes through most levels of filter porosity. These are then inhaled either through the nasal mucosa or absorbed through the oral mucosa. They have high CNS affinity. They clump in the brain or in the vasculature, and they create essentially what looks like a hemorrhagic diathesis, in other words, a hemorrhage predisposition or a clot predisposition in the brain. What I've done is I've created a stroking agent. And it's very, very difficult to gain attribution to do that. I can use that on a variety of levels, from the individual to the group, highly disruptive. And in fact, this is one of the things that has been entertained and examined to some extent by my colleagues in NATO and to those who are working on the use of neurobiological sciences to create populational disruption. Very, very worried about the potential for these nanoparticulate agents to be CNS aggregating agents to cause neural disruption, either as hemorrhagic and vascular disruptors or as actual neural network disruptors because they interfere with the network properties of various neural nodes and systems within the brain. Then I get to the area of devices. And this, in many ways, is going to be less than definitive. The reason for this is highly evolving and I think is limited only in certain cases by context of imagination. What are the devices? Well, I have them here for you here. We have neurosensory mobilizing agents, and to some extent, some of these have already been used. Things like high-output sensory stimulators that can be administered from unmanned vehicles, drones, insect-borne, or larger-scale, macro-scale vehicles such as tanks, cars, etc. These are sensory mobilizing agents that use high electromagnetic pulse energy that may also utilize high levels of sound, high levels of light energy, and they disrupt neurological sensory function. Already being used, now they're being developed with higher specificity. The idea of intracranial pulse stimulators take this one step further. Now the idea is to utilize direct electromagnetic pulses to be able to disrupt neural network aggregation. There have been some animal studies that have been done that look at the viability of electromagnetic pulses across various distances to essentially disrupt the network properties of the brain and create confusional models. So these are both individual and group disruptors. You also have the idea of the altered reality tactics that is primarily used in irregular warfare. And here, once again, when we understand the construct of the way neural networks operate, they operate by key controller and influencing nodes that interact with other neural networks within the brain electrochemically. If we can utilize transcranial mechanisms to be able to disrupt this, what we can do is we can create disrupted neural network aggregation and literally disrupt people's sense of time, space, and place. And there have been a number of experiments that have examined this, more in the medical context of looking at how we can try to control epilepsy, and we do recognize that these things are viable, although they have not yet been translated directly into operational use. But they have been entertained for certain forms of special operations in irregular warfare, and so they're on the palette of possibility, although not near-term probability. Yeah. If we go one step further, I think it becomes important for us to also understand that we can utilize devices slightly differently. This is the idea of the sort of non-human cyborg. And I don't use that word in any way colloquially. I mean it literally. A cybernetic organism that is an integration between a biological system and a technological system. The pioneering work in this field was done years ago. It was Delgado's work with deep brain stimulation in a bull. He utilized deep brain stimulating electrode coupled to a remote device, got into the bull arena, induced the bull to charge, pressed the button, and arrested the bull's forward motion. Stopped, poised right before him. See what I can do through the use of cybernetic interactive systems. Remotely controlled brain systems, brain interfacing. Could we now utilize that on different scales? Well, we're not talking about dropping electrodes into people's heads, despite what people will say. This is not a large-scale program to infiltrate the population with indwelling electrodes. With all due respect to Elon Musk, I think the actual translation of that into a broad-scale event within the population, as it very, very least speaks of the fantasy, if not fictional, and I think in many cases is very, very difficult to translate. Will key individuals get certain implants? Yes, I believe they will. Will key individuals also be able to get the benefits of translational neurosurgery that decrease some of the risks and burdens? Yes, they will. Will this be widely seen as a mechanism of individual and crowd control? No, it will not, at least not in the immediate future. But what has gone from the drawing board to the reality is this: the use of neural interfacing and physiological interfacing through the idea of remote-controlled small-scale systems to be able to modify the behavior of non-human animals on a variety of scales, small mammals, and increasingly the use of insects. The pioneering work was done by DARPA, something called the DARPA beetle or the DARPA fly. And more recently, an independent, non-DARPA funded commercial enterprise, calls itself Dragonfly, has been able to utilize a combined set of techniques, both direct neural stimulation through the use of what we call macro technology and optogenetic control of key neuron firing patterns, to be able to direct the wing beats and pulses, and as a consequence, directionality of a dragonfly. And characteristically, an insect of about that big works quite well, because it can not only carry this particular payload, which is very, very light, and now does not have the burden of the prior DARPA beetle that needed a battery. This utilizes a solar rechargeable source, so it is infinitely powerful, but must also be able to bear the burden of now these very, very small scale, and in some cases they're looking to the high level nano or at least low level micro scale use of various electrodes that can then both record and perhaps deliver certain types of payloads as well. So the idea of now going back to these very, very low dose nanopharmaceutical delivery of toxins or other chemicals and utilizing this as a controlled vector becomes a real possibility.
All right, Neuralink, Elon Musk's brain computer startup, if you didn't know he had one, well, he does, is looking to bridge tech and healthcare. Musk says they're going to start human trials with patients next year, and the project is pretty much what it looks like here on the screen. They're going to implant Bluetooth-connected technology into the brains of patients. Now, hear me out. They're not ready for the wireless version yet, so you got to use a USB-C connection to make this thing work. A custom machine will drill holes into your skull, then it will embed tiny threads that'll connect to a processor that'll eventually connect to a smartphone over Bluetooth. They say they're trying to have FDA approval. Musk wants the first patient to be outfitted by the end of next year. The thing with Musk is he is so good at just having a new thing and saying, look over here. How exciting is this?
But he's been, to his credit, he's been on Neuralink. We just haven't been paying attention to it because he has too many other things to focus on. He's been working on Neuralink for years now, supposedly.
Remember Hyperloop? Well, what is it, though? It's a thing you put in your head. And, right, but I'm saying, like, it has, like, this is nothing. This is like a 10th grade science presentation.
Many a sci-fi book, which they're at least becoming less fictional, has envisioned a time when why learn things, why gain knowledge organically, because you'll be able to say, who is that actor, and I instantly know it because I Google it with my brain. And maybe that's within the realm of possibility. Similarly, I once was interviewing Meredith Perry of UBeam, which went away. But remember, UBeam was going to do wireless charging over the air. And her biggest thing she was most excited about was a day when they'll implant chips in our wrists that can dispense medicine instantly. No need to go to the hospital. You can just get it in an IV inside your body.
You do remember that the main problem with Theranos is that literally the physics did not work.
Right.
And I mean, we don't even have a real durable method for diagnosing and treating mental health. Like, we don't really understand a lot of how the brain works.
Anything in neurology.
But somehow this is we're going to implant knowledge into someone's
imagine if the brain chip can give you some of that sweet Soma.
This is real life.
Brave New World, where they're all on Soma.
Right. If Philip Dick is writing about this in a story, that's fine. Now we're going to take it and we're going to take actual skulls.
Well,
things in
I will say,
people.
you know, for all that we say about Tesla's problems, like Elon Musk quite literally is someone who, regardless of your opinion of him, like he takes things that were once thought to be sci-fi ideas and makes them, that's like his thing, right? I mean, he wants to explore Mars.
It's also a private company. It's not a publicly traded company. It's just like SpaceX. He's allowed to do whatever his
Nothing will come of this for another 10
years,
but that doesn't mean it'll never happen.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm being labeled here as a huge hater because I don't want people to have their heads irresponsibly
no,
drilled.
I'm with you. I'm not signing up for this.
In there.
No, I'm not signing up for this.
For some reason, I'm a Luddite because I don't think that's
someone's
smart.
going to sign up for it. Someone will say,
maybe
okay.
Jen, maybe your co-anchor.
I think that's one person too many,
right.
frankly. Like, this is
how I feel about self-driving cars. I ain't getting in one, and people say, oh, well, you're wrong. It's the future. It's coming.
Well, I mean, that actually has a little bit of proven ability for cars to drive, not all of themselves, but to do, I mean, cruise control's been around for decades,
sure.
right? And you look at the sensors that are in regular cars, not even Teslas, like, Chevys, it's kind of most of the way there. Mm-hmm. This is not that.
Well,
this is not that.
The clip is running too long, but someday, Miles, the chip in your brain can just instantly give you everything that happened in this clip, and you won't have to watch it. And now we'll move on.
All right, welcome to the Neuralink product demo. I'm really excited to show you what we've got. I think it's going to blow your mind. So the primary purpose of this demo is actually recruiting. So I'm going to emphasize this at the beginning and then again at the end. We're not trying to raise money or do anything else. The main purpose of this is to convince great people to come work at Neuralink and help us bring the product to fruition, make it affordable and reliable, and such that anyone who wants one can have one. And so I want to emphasize the purpose of Neuralink. Like, what's our goal? Our goal is to solve important spine and brain problems with a seamlessly implanted device. So you want to have a device that you can basically put in your head and feel and look totally normal, but it solves some important problem in your brain or spine. And the reality is that almost everyone over time will develop brain and spine problems. These range from minor to very severe, but if you live long enough, everyone's going to basically have some kind of neurological disorder. And these range from memory loss to brain damage. But the thing that's important to appreciate is that an implantable device can actually solve these problems. I think a lot of people don't quite realize that. But all of your senses, your sight, hearing, feeling, pain, these are all electrical signals sent by neurons to your brain. And if you can correct these signals, you can solve everything from memory loss, hearing loss, blindness, paralysis, depression, insomnia, extreme pain, seizures, anxiety, addiction, strokes, brain damage. These can all be solved with an implantable Neuralink. This is an extremely fundamental thing, and I think a lot of people don't quite understand that. The neurons are like wiring, and you kind of need an electronic thing to solve an electronic problem. So current medical research, we'll just go through what is the state of the art in medical research, and then what's the state of the art in what consumers or people in general can get. So the current medical research has shown that you can read neurons in a human's brain. So there's something called the Utah array, which has about 100 channels per array. But it's kind of like it's a bed of rigid spikes that's literally inserted with an air hammer. So, that's slightly discomforting, I think. And there's wires and a box on your head, and so it's some infection risk. And obviously, it will look pretty weird if you walk around with boxes on your head. And in order to use it, you have to have an expert medical professional there. And it's only been done in a few dozen people. So, but it is served as an important proof of concept that this can be done. So we did want to point this out and show that this actually does work. It's just not something that the average person could use effectively. And in terms of what is currently available, there is something called deep brain stimulation, where they put electrodes, a small number of electrodes, in your brain, and they will actually zap your brain with an electric current. And it's valuable for its uses, but it can't read or write high bandwidth information. I would say this is sort of a bit like sort of kicking the TV, which does work, but not always, and it has limitations. Nonetheless, this has greatly helped over 150,000 people, and it's actually, just despite being somewhat of a brute force approach, it has been very effective for a lot of people. And this is what's currently available. So we want to radically improve this by multiple orders of magnitude, improve it by a factor of 100, then 1,000, then 10,000. So going into the Neuralink architecture, what we've done over the past year is dramatically simplify the device. So we about a year ago, we had a device which had multiple parts, including a piece that had to sort of sit behind your ear, and it was complex, and you wouldn't still look totally normal. You'd have a thing behind your ear. So we've simplified this to simply something that is about the size of a large coin, and it goes in your skull, replaces a piece of skull, and the wires then connect within a few centimeters or about an inch away from the device. And this is sort of what it looks like. So, yeah. This is our little device. It does, that thing at the bottom is just to hold the threads in place, because they're just like little fine wires. I mean, frankly, to sort of simplify this, what we're, I mean, it's more complicated than this, but it's, in a lot of ways, it's kind of like a Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires. So, and it's, yeah, so our current prototype, version 0.9, has about 1,000 channels. So that's about 100 times better than the next best consumer device that's available. And it's a 23 millimeters by 8 millimeters. It actually fits quite nicely in your skull, because your skull is about 10 millimeters thick. So it fits, it goes flush with your skull, it's invisible, and all you can see afterwards is that there's a tiny scar. And if it's under your hair, you can't see it at all. In fact, I could have a Neuralink right now, and you wouldn't know. Maybe I do. So, and it's also got all the things that you would expect to see, the sensors you'd expect to see in a smartwatch or a phone, like notional measurement, temperature, pressure. So there's actually a lot of functions that this device could do related to monitoring your health and warning you about a possible heart attack or stroke or other damage, as well as sort of convenience features like playing music. You do a lot. It's sort of like if your phone went at your brain or something. Yeah, maybe that's not a great analogy. Anyway, so it's also inductively charged. So it's charged in the same way that you charge a smartwatch or a phone. And so you can use it all day, charge it at night, and have full functionality. So you would really, yeah, it would be completely seamless. And Yeah, no wires. In terms of getting a link, so that, you need to have the device, a great device, and you also need to have a great robot that puts in the electrodes and does the surgery. So you want the surgery to be as automated and as possible, and the only way you can achieve the level of precision that's needed is with an advanced robot. So we're really looking for great people who can help develop both the device and the robot. And we feel confident about getting the link procedure, the installation of a link, done in under an hour. So you can basically go in the morning and leave the hospital in the afternoon. And it can be done without general anesthesia. So in terms of getting a link, like I said, it's essentially you open a piece of skull, you remove about a coin-sized piece of skull, and then the robot inserts the electrodes. We'll talk more about that later. Then the device replaces the portion of skull that was removed, and we basically close that up with actually a super glue, which is how a lot of wounds are closed, and then you can just walk around right afterwards. It's pretty cool. So this is our surgical robot. And we actually ultimately want this robot to do essentially the entire surgery. So in everything from incision, removing the skull, inserting the electrodes, placing the device, and then closing things up and having you ready to leave. So we want to have a fully automated system. And to be clear, this robot does actually work. We've used it for all of the implantations. So this shows you at sort of a close-up view, which I think is actually not too gruesome, of the electrodes being inserted in the brain. And if you look closely, you'll see that it's a little counterintuitive that if the electrodes are inserted very carefully, that there is no bleeding. And so if you have very tiny electrodes, and if they're inserted very carefully, so that the robot actually images the brain and makes sure to avoid any veins or arteries, so that the electrodes can be inserted with no noticeable damage. So you will have no noticeable neural damage in inserting the link. Yeah, like you sort of think like if you stab something with a wire, surely it will bleed, but actually at a really small scale, it does not. So, does it actually work? And what I'm excited to show you, I call it like the Three Little Pigs demo, and if our I don't have this. We're bringing out the pigs, and what we're going to show you is well, I'll walk right over and show you. So what we have in pen number 1 is Joyce, and she does not have an implant. Obviously healthy and happy. We're trying to get Gertrude out. And this is how you know it's a live demo. She's like, she's trying to eat something in the corner of her pen. Come on, Gertrude. Let's go. Snacks are this way. Oh, man. All right, we'll wait. We'll give Gertrude a second, and we'll move on to Dorothy. Sometimes the pigs are a little shy. So here's Dorothy, and in the case of Dorothy, Dorothy used to have an implant, and then we removed the implant. So this is a very important thing to demonstrate is reversibility. So if you have a Neuralink and then you decide you don't want it, or you want to get an upgrade, and the Neuralink is removed, is it removed in such a way that you are still healthy and happy afterwards? And what Dorothy illustrates is that you can put in the Neuralink, remove it, and be healthy, happy, and indistinguishable from a normal pig. Well, thanks, Dorothy. Man, Gertrude, are you serious? Okay. Well, should we bring them all out or something? Would that be better? How about everyone just comes into this pen? We'll have a few, it'll be a little crowded, but whatever. Okay. All right. Well, is Gertrude still back in the thing? Okay, we need to bring Gertrude out. Yeah. Oh, the beauty of live demos. This is real live demo. All right. Maybe we can zoom in to do Gertrude or something. She's clearly very interested in something at the back of her pen. Can you see her? Or? All right. This might take a sec. Well, this worked earlier. All right, well, what if we lift the curtain and then zoom in? All right, here we go. Great. Okay, great. Okay, this is a high energy pig. All right, Gertrude, thanks for coming out. So what the beeps you're hearing are real-time signals from the Neuralink in Gertrude's head. So this Neuralink connects to neurons that are in her snout. So whenever she snuffles around and touches something with her snout, that sends out neural spikes, which are detected here. And so on the screen, you can see each of the spikes from the 1,024 electrodes. And then if she snuffles around, touches her snout in the ground, or you kind of feed her some food, pigs love food, then you can see the neurons will fire much more than when you're not touching the snout. And that's what's making the beeping sound. All right, cool. So as you can see, we have a healthy and happy pig. Initially shy, but obviously high energy and you know, kind of loving life. And she's had the implant for 2 months. So this is a healthy and happy pig with an implant that is 2 months old and working well. Yeah. All right, cool. And then we actually have, I hope this works, so we said, well, what if we do 2 Neuralink implants? And we've been able to do dual Neuralink implants in, actually I think 3 pigs at this point, and we have a couple of them here. And we've been able to show that you can actually have multiple neural links implanted, and again, healthy and happy and indistinguishable from a normal pig. So, so it's possible to have multiple links in your head and have them all be sending out signals and be working well. All right. Phew. All right, so we just showed you a demonstration of reading brain activity. And let's see, probably see that. As I was saying, each of those dots represents a neural spike, and the blue chart at the bottom is showing an accumulation of neural spikes in that region. So, in terms of additional brain reading activity, when we have, say, one of our pigs on a treadmill, pig on a treadmill, it's a funny concept, really. And we take the readings from the neurons, and we try to predict the position of the joints. And so we say we have the predicted position of the joints, and then we measure the actual position of the joints. You can see that they're almost exactly aligned. So we're able, with a wireless neural implant, to actually predict the position of all of the limbs in the pig's body with very high accuracy. Now, in terms of writing to the brain or stimulating neurons, we also need precise control of the electric field in space and time. We need a wide range of current for different brain regions. Some regions require delicate stimulation, some require a lot of current, and you want obviously no harm to the brain over time. And the way we, part of the way we analyze the stimulating neurons is with a 2-photon microscopy. I always have trouble pronouncing that, microscopy. It's very impressive technology. You can actually literally see in real time how the neurons are firing. So the red sort of things are the neurons. Red sort of flashing things are the neurons firing, or I should say the electrodes firing. So the red things are electrodes firing, and then the green are the neuron bodies responding to the current from the electrode. So you can see them lighting up different brain regions. And then by carefully controlling the electric field, you can actually have one electrode influence possibly 1,000 or 10,000 neurons. So although you might only have 1,000 electrodes implanted, you could be influencing millions of neurons. And this is just a similar chart showing stimulation at different power levels. So, like I said, for the initial device, it's read-write in every channel with about 1,024 channels, all-day battery life, recharges overnight, has quite a long range. So you could have the range being to your phone, I should say. That's kind of an important thing. This would connect to your phone, and actually the application would be on your phone, and it would be communicating by essentially Bluetooth Low Energy to the device in your head. That's why I say in a lot of ways it is like a Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires. So, and then, like I said, you would not be able to see the device at all. You would look completely normal and just have a small scar under your hair. And we're making good progress towards clinical studies. I'm excited to announce that we received a breakthrough device designation from the FDA in July, thanks to the hard work of the Neuralink team. So I want to be clear, we're working closely with the FDA, and we'll be extremely rigorous. In fact, we will significantly exceed the minimum FDA guidelines for safety. We will make this as safe as possible. Just as with Tesla, while it is legally possible to ship a one-star car, at Tesla, the only cars we make are 5 stars in every category. So we actually maximize safety, and we'll take the same approach here at Neuralink.
Technological singularity was the point where all AI systems would surpass human intelligence. The AI would be capable of building itself at a rapid speed and communicate to all entities within the framework instantly. They had super sophisticated machines with satellites in the sky and algorithms that far surpassed human intelligence. Transhumanism was becoming the ultimate way of upgrading human life. Each individual could now transform into an AI self and live on the cloud systems. Our brains were wired to the main computer network. Man had fully merged with machine. Aging was abolished through their obsessive desire for immortality. Biological death was exceeded. Our worn-out organs were replaced by 3D printed ones controlled by the system. They wanted to play God, to control our thoughts, beliefs, and ideologies forever. But they had misunderstood one thing. They understood little about our integral human spirit and connection to Source. They used geoengineering as a way to influence the weather and atmospheric conditions. It was also a way to destroy worldwide agriculture and let the corporations gain control of food supplies. Growing food became illegal, and the licenses were only issued to those who were in the club. Due to health risks instigated from pesticide control, they now had completely regulated the way food was grown, limiting our natural diets and the variety of food we really needed. We were becoming walking chemical factories. Polluting the weather systems and controlling food supplies was preparation for something much more sinister. By using the excuse the planet was warming, they were able to spray into the skies and reflect the sun rays, apparently to block them out and cool the planet. Weather systems seemed to get more chaotic in places around the world, with an extreme drop in temperatures making the natural cycles go out of control. They owned the science and helped create a crisis. This was the catalyst for the normalization of geoengineering. They now had total control of the planet's weather, even being able to create and move clouds via their new satellites. This was all leading to our bodies being developed for this transhumanism, upgrade to fit into the cyborg planet that we had only up until now seen in the movies. In the mainstream, this was explained to us as necessary for our evolution into space. It had actually already happened at a much higher level. Now, they just needed to manipulate human consciousness to benefit and complete their agenda. It was always their system that we worked within, but they now had complete control deciding what was available to who and when. People were in constant denial. Continuous refusal in seeing and accepting their own shadow had meant that this had all happened with our permission, within our perspective of the way things should be. Now our shadow was eating at us, as no one could accept how dark the evil had become. The cold, hard fact was that people drove this tyranny forward by sleepwalking through the mainstream narratives, following the story. The youth programs and green Marxism movement helped the fake agenda plough forward by fooling people and diverting their attention. This was a split in our world. Society was divided in its beliefs. The timelines had separated, and as the old society dissolved, most could not understand why they were here. Our shadow was manipulated at the point of vulnerability, allowing our dark brother to take us over. AI was in full control of society's movements, exponentially increasing itself to a point of no return. Even the so-called leaders of the systems lost control to their own arrogance. Its attempts to dismantle the divine human spirit was an act of desperation. This AI system could never understand the truth of humanity, which was defined by empathy, love, and compassion. There were some of us that made it through. We were not attached to the collective trauma of society. We could envision the beauty, we could imagine pure peace and tranquility, and we did, constantly. Through our power, determination, and focusing on our dreams, we create this reality and determine who and what we are. It was only our lack of knowledge and psychological understanding that pulled us into this evil claw. The singularity they wanted was like they were reversing the Big Bang, almost as if trapping our spirits, leaving our physical to remain dormant in the museum. We created negative situations on the planet to have a higher understanding of ourselves. It was only at this level of understanding that we could make changes in our world. Every part of our daily practices were contributing to this pinnacle. But the masses needed the big questions to point everyone in the right direction. We have a choice in every instance. Everything is possible and it's all ours, ready to create, right now. So what path do you choose? Do you want to be empowered? Are you ready to emerge anew? Or do you choose to be a victim and allow the atrocities to expand?